70% of the time a pot of chili sits on your stove, the burner is just paying rent. The water already boiled. The pot already holds the heat. You're still burning gas or electricity for another hour because nobody told you the rest of dinner can finish in a dead cooler on the floor. Tonight, I'm going to show you how to build a 1918 Fireless cooker in about 10 minutes from a thrift store cooler and a stack of towels, then cook rice, beans, and chili with the knobs off. The box costs nothing if you already own the cooler. It cuts the time your stove actually has to stay on by about 70%. I have been running one for months. I'm not going back to babysitting a simmer. There's a reason this is not a solar oven and not an Instant Pot review, and it has nothing to do with hay. I will get to the part that actually keeps the pot above a safe hold for hours, and the one mistake that turns this into lukewarm soup. First, you need to see why your stove is doing the expensive half of a job a towel can finish. A small electric burner sits around 1200 watts. At a typical 16 cents a kilowatt hour, that is about 20 cents. For every hour you leave it on low, 2 hours of simmering a day is roughly $140 a year, just for the privilege of watching bubbles. Gas is cheaper per hour and still wasteful in the same way. You paid to get the pot screaming hot. After that, you're mostly fighting the kitchen air, which is trying to steal the heat as fast as you make it. The Haybox stops the theft. The mechanism is almost insulting. Heat does not vanish when you kill the flame. It leaks. It leaks through the lid, through the thin metal wall, through the handle, and mostly it leaks upward because hot air rises and your kitchen is a chimney. A heavy pot is a battery. Water is a better battery than you think. If you wrap that battery so the leak slows to a crawl, the temperature inside stays high enough to keep cooking starch and softening beans for 3 or 4 hours with the stove cold. Aprovecho, the cook stove lab that actually measures this stuff, puts the fuel savings between 20 and 80% depending on the pot and the food. The high end is big wet pots. That is chili, that is beans, that is rice. This is not new. In 1867, a Norwegian box lined with wool and felt showed up at the Paris exhibition. They boiled a chicken, dropped the tin into the box, walked it to the far side of the room, and 2 hours later it was done. Americans called the later versions Fireless cookers. By 1910, companies were selling them with names like the Acme Automatic. In 1914, a home economist named Mary Fraser wrote that there should be one in every kitchen in the land because food in it never burns, and you do not have to stand there feeding a fire. The USDA printed pamphlets on homemade versions around the First World War. Britain pushed hay boxes again when fuel got tight. Then we invented knobs that click and forgot the box. You do not need hay. Hay was what a 1918 farm had lying around. What you need is trapped air. Towels trap air, a sleeping bag traps air, crumpled newspaper traps air. An old cooler is already a box designed to fight temperature change. That is the whole shopping list if you have a lidded pot. Use the heaviest pot you own with a lid that actually fits. Cast iron and enameled Dutch ovens are greedy about heat. Thin aluminum dumps it. Stainless works, if it is thick enough to feel stupid when you pick it up empty. Fill it at least 2/3. A half-empty pot is a half-empty battery. Use a little less water than you usually would because almost none of it will boil off in the box. Bring the food to a real rolling boil on the stove, not a shy simmer. A boil you can hear. Rice wants about 5 hard minutes after it boils. Dried beans that were soaked overnight want closer to 15 or 20. Chili or stew wants 10. That first blast is the only paid heat. It also answers the safety question people use to talk themselves out of this, and I will tear that one apart properly in a minute. The second the boil is honest, lid on, off the burner, into the nest. Speed matters. Every 10 seconds of standing around is heat you already paid for walking into the room. If you are still here, subscribe. It is free and it keeps this channel testing the odd household machines nobody bothers with. Members get the longer teardown videos. Back to the box, because the packing is the part that decides whether dinner is hot at 6 or sad at 6. Build the nest before you ever light the stove. Open the cooler. Lay a folded towel on the floor of it. Set the empty pot in and shove towels, a folded blanket, or a sleeping bag around it until the pot has a snug hole, including under the bottom. Leave a thick pillow of towels for the top. Heat rises. A naked lid under a half-closed cooler lid is how people decide, and hay boxes do not work. The pot comes off the stove, set it in the hole, yank the side towels up around it, bury the lid under that top pillow, shut the cooler, latch it if it has a latch, then walk away. Do not peek. Opening it is the same as opening an oven. You just vented the battery. Rice is done in about an hour and a half in a decent nest. Chili and stew want 3 to 4 hours and will still be serving hot. Soaked beans want 3. Overnight oatmeal works in a small lunch cooler if the insulation is thick. A weak nest gives you cooked oats that went cold, which is a texture crime, not a mystery. If you need it hotter at the table, 1 minute back on the burner wakes it up. That is still a 70% cut. The money is not theoretical. 20 cents an hour on a small electric burner, 90 minutes of simmering you no longer buy, 5 nights a week, is about $78 a year on one pot habit. Add beans on weekends and a stew you used to babysit for 2 hours, and you are in the 150 range without touching the oven. Households that keep a pot murmuring every night, or who use the oven as a warmer, can see 200 to 300. A store thermal cooker with a cute vacuum insert is $80 to $200 and does the same physics. Your cooler already did the shopping. 3 stories people tell themselves so they can keep paying the burner. It will go unsafe. This one gets repeated like a spell. The United States Department of Agriculture's food shop draws a hard line at 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Below that, down to 40, is the zone where leftover food is not a science experiment you want to run. A Haybox is not a magic exemption. It is a hold. You start at a rolling boil, which is 212 at sea level. A packed cooler is supposed to keep that pot hot, not lukewarm. If you open it 3 hours later and steam still slaps you, you cooked. If you open it and it is tepid, you do not serve it, you do not give it another hour, you throw it or you get it back above a proper reheat, and then eat it immediately. Meat dishes get brought back to a serious simmer for a few minutes after the box if you want to be boring and correct, which I am. Poultry needs to have hit 165 on a thermometer before you ever trusted the nest. This is a pot of beans, not a personality. You need hay, you need dead air. Hay is dead air with extra insects. A 1918 pamphlet used hay because the barn was free. A 2026 closet has towels. Same job. Wool is excellent. A cheap foam camping pad cut into scraps is excellent. Do not use fiberglass insulation unless you enjoy eating attic. It only does oatmeal. Oatmeal is the cute internet version. The 1867 demo was a chicken. The USDA pamphlets were cereals, meats, puddings, beans. I have done rice, chili, soaked black beans, and a pot of potatoes that came out like they had been simmered by someone with patience I do not have. What it will not do is sear a steak, bake a cake, or cook a giant dry roast. It is a wet heat machine. If the food needs moving water or a brown crust, use the stove like a normal person for that part. Then park the sauce. The 4th one is quieter. You need a special appliance. You do not. The $200 thermal cooker is a Haybox with better manners and a price tag. Same boil, same berry, same weight. The extra that makes this worth building, even if you like, your stove is the warmer. Pack the box in the morning with last night's stew brought back to a boil, latch it, take it to work, or leave it on the counter. 6 hours later, it is still a meal, not a science fair leftover. Potlucks, a kid's practice that runs long. The night you get home late and refuse to order the thing in the bag. 1 cooler, 2 jobs, a few things that wreck it so you do not blame the year 1918. A warped lid, a pot sitting on the plastic floor with no towel under it. A cooler so huge the towels slosh around and leave air chimneys. Peaking, a thin pot. Starting from a polite simmer instead of a boil. Putting a half cup of rice in a 6-quart Dutch oven and expecting the empty iron to stay hot. Match the pot to the food. Match the nest to the pot. If you want to know whether your nest is any good before you trust dinner to it, boil a pot of water. Bury it. Come back in 2 hours with a thermometer. You want it still well above 140. If it died, add more on top and around the sides and try again. That test costs a burner and an afternoon, and it is the only exam this box has to pass. I keep the cooler in the pantry now. The towels live in it, so I'm not hunting them while a pot screams. Dinner starts, the knobs go off, the kitchen gets quiet, and the food finishes like it has somewhere better to be. That is the whole trick. A dead appliance you already own doing the long half of the cook for free. If this saves you an hour of staring at a lid tonight, send it to the person in your house who still hovers over a simmer and tap, like so I know which of these old machines to drag back next.